Once I was in Blackpool, UK for an educational purpose. I was living closer to the Blackpool station, but I didn't know where exactly was the station. Rather than going through the Google Maps, I thought of asking from someone where exactly the station was. So I met this nice gentleman who told me, "It's 15 minutes walk, mate." So I started walking towards the direction that this gentleman has shown me. I walked for 15 minutes, but I didn't see a single sign of a railway station. I was a little bit confused, yet I relied on this gentleman's word. So I continued. After about 5 more minutes, I reached my destination. Welcome to Mindful Contract Administrator. Today we are going to talk about magnificent measured mile. Measured mile is a technique which is being used in the construction industry in order to assess the loss of productivity in an interrupted situation or else an impacted situation. This is one of the few other methods which is being used for calculation of assessment of loss of productivity, such as inter-project devices and industry-based devices. Measured mile technique is a project-specific evaluation method of loss of productivity. There are about 5 project-specific evaluation methods which we will discuss within other videos of this Mindful Contract Administrator. Now, going back to the example which I cited, I realized this particular gentleman was a tall, athletic gentleman. So, the yardstick that he has used to measure the distance between my place and the Blackpool railway station was different from what is applicable to me. In other words, his yardstick was inapplicable to my situation, being a slow walker. Now, as you are aware, any construction project goes in an S curve when it relates to the productivity, because during the first few months the productivity of the laborers or direct labor will be less when you compare to that with in the middle of the project, because they have to undergo certain learning curves. They have to do certain HSC trainings, they might be doing some mobilization work, and then they go through some adaptation process in order to go in full-fledged into this particular project. So after 2-3 months, you can see the real productivity, the utmost productivity of the laborers. So that example which I have cited is very similar to those two scenarios. Like during the beginning of the project is like my walking, and during the full-fledged of the project is like that gentleman's walking. So this is the fundamental principle revolving around the measured mile, that is choosing the correct yardstick. Once again, the measured mile process is a process wherein you compare an impacted situation with an unimpacted situation. But when you are deciding this impacted situation along with the unimpacted situation, you have to take into account certain factors. Now, let me give you a real life example which is more closer to your heart. Suppose that you are working in an office for 9 hours from 8 to 5. So with a 1 hour lunch break, you normally work for 8 hours. Assume that you have to respond to 40 emails every day. So in an average, you have to respond to about 5 emails within an hour. So within the first hour of your work, think about the things that you are normally doing. You make a cup of coffee, you have a word with your boss, you have a word with your colleagues, and then maybe you're cleaning your table, and there are certain other things which distracts you from working in full-fledged. Therefore, within the first hour of the work, you normally do not respond to those 5 emails. You may be responding to, let me say, about 2-3 emails. But during the next hour, let's say from 9 to 10, you are doing your work in full-fledged. That is your better productivity than the first hour of work. So you may be catching up the gap between the previous hour and this hour, the workload that you are supposed to do. Similarly, during the last hour of the work, from 4 to 5, you may do the same thing because you may be fatigued with your work and you may opt to go to your friends, you may feel lonely, and then you might be talking about your next day plans, in the evening plans, and all these things. Therefore, your productivity again go down during the last hour. Now, assume that your employer wants to arrange a farewell party to one of your colleagues. So, what is the best hour that he should choose? It is not 9 to 10, where you are working in your full-fledged and you are giving your full productivity to the company. So, if he is a smart employer, what he used to do is he will choose 4 to 5 to give the minimum disturbance to the productivity of the company while arranging this farewell party. In the similar fashion, in projects, when you encounter that sort of a situation, the best way to handle that situation is to give the changes during the early period of the project, wherein the workers are not in full-fledged and the productivity is low. Therefore, the minimum disturbance will come. Now, coming back to the measured mile method, I told you that it is a magnificent measured mile. Why I call you as magnificent measured mile is this is not only restricted to a construction project. You can adapt very simply into any other life scenarios, real life scenarios, in assessing the loss of productivity by using measured mile technique. Now, you have to remember 3 things when you are talking about applying the measured mile technique correctly. Let me abbreviate these 3 things into one word: PAN. PAN. Very easy for you to remember. P means the period. You need to identify the exact period of disruption or the impacted situation in order to assess an unimpacted situation with the same period. Number 2, activity. You should identify what activities have been affected, and then you should get a sample from an unaffected, I repeat, unaffected set of same activities in order for you to understand the correct situation. N means normal situation. You need to identify exactly the normal situation before this interruption or impacted situation occurred. So in order to identify a normal situation, there may be certain scenarios, right? The measured mile technique uses 2 normal situation scenarios. One is, we call it the dollar method. That is based on the activity which has been completed, right? And the cost which has been absorbed by that particular activity. So the resources which has been expended for this particular operation is embedded within that particular cost. The other method is called hour method. That means HOUR, hour method, in order to assess the actual loss of productivity in terms of hours. That may be machinery hours, that may be labor hours, or any other form of hours which has been spent by the resources. Now, you can see these 2 buildings, right? Those are 2 different types of buildings. Therefore, Due to the bespoke nature of projects, it is very difficult to adapt one scenario to another project. That is why we call it as a project specific method. However, there are methods which has been developed in order to address the inter-project scenarios as well, as I have told you in the beginning of the video, as well as based on industry practices in order to assess and evaluate the loss of productivity. Once again, measured mile is a technique which is being used in order to assess or evaluate the loss of productivity in an impacted situation compared with an unimpacted yardstick. So when you talk about yardstick, this particular example which I have cited, I realized later that in order for a gentleman or a grown-up person to walk 1 mile, it will take about 15 minutes to 20 minutes. So this exactly fits with the term measured mile. It coincides with the term measured mile. Now, during this lockdown period, everybody accepts that we should do at least one form of exercise. So, my advice to you, walk like that tall gentleman who could walk 1 mile within 15 minutes, but not like me who could walk 1 mile within 20 minutes. Thank you.